I remember we did have George H.W. Bush come talk to us. And when he came to talk, they came through and took all of our mics because we were all in vehicles. And so he was giving a speech over the radio, and they came and took all of our mics. I don't know why. They didn't want us to say anything to the president. But no, I did basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia. I'll never forget, they didn't have the reception station there at that time. They were building a new reception station, so we had to fly into Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And I went to the MEP station in Detroit, and when I got up there, they put me in a flea bag hotel somewhere. It was just absolutely horrible. And of course, I didn't get any sleep because all of the rooms were open to one another, and so I was up there with a whole bunch of other idiots that were shipping out too, and so they were having a party. So when you're young and dumb, you party. So we partied. And so then we got on a plane at Detroit Metro and headed to the south, and we landed in Atlanta, Georgia. When we got in Atlanta, Georgia, they had these cattle cars there for us to get into. And there wasn't any room to set. And of course, I didn't sleep on the plane. It's the first time ever I was on a big aircraft. And so we didn't sleep on the plane because we were all kind of geeked up and excited. Of course, you're talking to everybody, and everybody's got a John Wayne story. You know, when I get there, they're not going to do this to me, and they're not going to do that to me. I'll give them the what for. So I was up that whole night too, and I get on a cattle car, and it is absolutely standing room only. And we have to drive from Atlanta, Georgia to Fort Benning, Georgia, Columbus, Georgia. It was, I'm sorry, when they got the cattle cars, we went from Atlanta, Georgia to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So on these cattle cars, standing up the whole time. And of course, I got to the point where I was so tired, I would fall asleep standing up, and you'd wake up, and it was like you went through a time warp. And so they got us Fort Jackson to the reception center. It was probably about 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And they got us all off and took us in front of this housing barracks, big brick building, and they set us all in formation. We had to set. And then they were playing some stupid video that I couldn't pay attention to. And of course, you're brand new, you don't know any better, and there's some E2 nothing private coming through and kicking you in the back and screaming at you to stay awake and everything. And he might as well be general of the Army as far as you're concerned. So, you know, you do what he is told. Later on, after you get a little bit of experience, you think, man, I should have just clocked him, because he had absolutely no authority at all. But they abused their authority. So they'd kick us and keep us awake. And so finally it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, they said, okay, they assigned us a number and told us where our racks were. We were supposed to get our racks done. So we grab our bedding, we go. And now this is the first time I'm in this place. I'm a kid from Camden Frontier School. I haven't been anything bigger than a barn. And I get into this place, and it's got stairways and hallways and everything running everywhere. And I'm completely confused. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. I don't want to be in the wrong spot because I want to be that guy that gets all the way through basic training without them knowing my name. So, because if they don't know your name at graduation, you did good. So I'm trying to find this place, and finally I find this empty rack, and I'm looking around, and I find a number, and I think, okay, was that the number they assigned me? I think it was. And so I figure that's my rack. So find a locker. Of course, it's dark because other people had gotten there before us. And so we're wandering around in a dark barracks trying to find where we're supposed to stay. I put my stuff in this locker and find the latrine. I go to the latrine and come back, and I'm thinking, man, I had a mustache then. I thought, man, should I shave? Now I'll have plenty of time to do that in the morning. I have plenty of time to do that in the morning. So I thought, well, I'm going to get some sleep. So I crawl up in the rack, and just as I lay my head down, these fire bells are going off and all the lights come on. I see everybody jumping up and they're grabbing, and half the guys are putting on uniforms. I don't have a uniform. Still got civilian clothes. I see all these. I thought, well, that must be for those guys. Can't be for us new guys that came in. So I laid my stupid little head back down on the pillow. Next thing I knew, the mattress come flying off the rack, and I come flying off the rack, and I landed on the floor, and I had somebody 2 inches from my face screaming that I better be up and in formation. I don't know where formation is. So I jump up, I throw my clothes on, I see people running all these different directions, and so I'm trying to follow, and I get outside, and just as I'm coming outside, this 4'1" black female drill sergeant catches me and starts screaming about what's that crap on my face. And I'm going, get that shaved off. No, I was like, oh crap. I didn't have time in the morning. So I went running back upstairs with a dry razor, and took my mustache off, come running back down to where this formation thing is, and I finally find it, and there isn't anybody there. But I see this group marching off. I thought, I'll just jump in with them and pretend I'm part of that group. Well, luckily, it did happen to be my group. So I jumped in. We got to the chow hall. Of course, then we come back. We go through orientation. We get our hair shaved and get treated like absolute dirt. But I still have not had any sleep. And now I'm going on my 4th day. And I am so stinking tired. I'm falling asleep standing up. I learned how to sleep with my eyes wide open. They didn't know I was asleep, but I wasn't there. I was completely gone. So after we were there a couple days, they loaded us we went through CIF, which is Central Issuing Facility, got our uniforms. They loaded us on Greyhound buses. Of course, we get on the bus, and everybody's a little bit loosened up now, because we've been in the Army 4 days. So we deserve some respect. So we're on this bus, and of course everybody starts loosening up, and everybody starts telling their John Wayne stories of the drill sergeant's not going to do this, and they're not going to do that, they're not going to do the other thing. And we got on a bus, and of course they gave us a boxed lunch that was probably the most disgusting food I've ever seen in my life. I thought to myself, why did I ever complain about anything my mother made? When I saw that lunch, it was horrible. That's what was supposed to get us from South Carolina to Fort Benning, Georgia. So we take these buses down. Of course, some of us need tobacco. Some of us want some soda because we weren't allowed to have soda. And so we got collected some money together. We had that brand new GI money. We were rich. We had $300 a month. And so we all had a little bit of money in our pocket. See, back then, when we used to get paid, it wasn't check to bank. They'd actually bring a pay officer into the area with $6 million worth of money, and you'd have to go through and do the whole thing, get paid, and you got actual cash. And so we had actual cash in our pocket, which was probably a bad thing to do to give to privates. But anyway, so we coerced the bus drivers into pulling over at a convenience store so that we could get all the little, the hoagies and the Zoom Zooms and all the different things that we weren't supposed to have, and we got. And so we headed on down to Fort Benning, Georgia. When we got down to Fort Benning, Georgia, it was dark by the time we got there. It was probably about 10 o'clock at night, and it had started to rain. It was raining, that beautiful Georgia rain. We didn't know which barracks we were going to. We didn't know if we were going to Sand Hill. We didn't know if we were going to Harmony Church. So we didn't know exactly what complex we were going to. And so we started pulling in, and we went and we turned, and we realized, okay, we're all going to what we affectionately call now Sand Hell. But it was the Sand Hill complex, and it was brand new, and they called them spaceships. They're a new type of barracks, where the bottom is nothing but pillars and an area in the center, and then everything else was out, and you had a second, third, and fourth floor. It was the barracks. And so we come pulling into there. Well, this complex had just newly been built. And so we were the first ones into that particular barracks as we came in. And so there isn't anything growing. There's just this red Georgia clay. From the road, red Georgia clay down to a sidewalk, and then all this concrete, which was the company area. So the buses come pulling in, everybody got a little bit quiet, the fear of the unknown. And the buses were sitting there rumbling low level lights come on. And we see this guy that was probably about 12'6". A great, big, huge, 6'2" black man, weighed probably 350 pounds with the brown round on. And all you could see is his eyes and his teeth as he was coming up the hill to the bus. He come on the bus, and instantly he was like, "So how was the trip for you boys?" It was fine. So did y'all have a good time? Does everybody have everything they need? Talking real sweet, nice to us. So of course, everybody started to loosen up. And one moron went, "Yeah, we stopped and got hoagies." And I was like, oh, what kind of a moron? Who recruited him? And so he said, "Oh, that's nice, that's nice, that's nice." And he went from angel to demon like that. He started screaming, "You got 10 seconds to get off this bus, and 8 of them are gone. 9. 10. Everybody got up, and now everybody's trying to rush off this bus. 50 people on a bus trying to rush off the same door in 2 seconds. I saw big guys pick little guys up and throw them behind them to get off the bus. These big, tough guys that were talking all this stuff, who wasn't going to make them do anything. And I'll never forget that first night we come running out, they had the bellies of the buses opened up. Now you got a thing that's called a sea bag. It's about this tall, about that big around, holds everything you own, and then some. Everything's got to be in there. And that pretty heavy when you got everything in there. And so as we're coming out the bus, they're screaming orders at us. Now, I'm from Michigan. This drill sergeant happened to end up being my drill sergeant. His name was Drill Sergeant Wall from Alabama. I thought I'd entered a whole different country. I could not understand any of the English that he was using. I was in Georgia. So I'm trying to listen very intently and follow the orders as given. And all I'm hearing is, "I'm right here, yeah." So not to get in trouble, you just watch and see what everybody else is doing. And heck yeah, you're a lemming. You do what everybody else does. You don't want to be the odd man out. So they're screaming for us to grab a duffel bag and hold it up over our heads. Okay, so I get to the side of the bus, and of course, I'm wearing RPGs, and it's raining. Rape prevention glasses, because they're the really ugly black framed ones. That's why we call them that. It's raining. I've got rain all over my glasses. I can't see. I'm at the side of the bus. I'm looking, and of course, I'm trying to find black writing on an OD green bag that's now wet from the rain. And I'm trying to find my bag. And that drill sergeant was right up and in my ear screaming, "I didn't say get yours, just grab a bag." So I grab a bag, and of course, I happen to get the fat man's bag. Well, he's got a lot more clothes because he's a lot bigger, so he wears the extra size stuff. So I've got probably the heaviest bag, and I weigh all of about 148 pounds at this point. So I got it up over my head, and they're screaming for us to run to the company area. Well, the problem was it was raining. And I don't know if you know what red Georgia clay is like, but yeah, it's like trying to run on solid cow pies going downhill. And so we were all running in a line, and of course, by the time 50 people have made it ahead of you, it's even more slippery and muddy, but there's this mud track that you're following. I've got my bag up over my head, and the guy 3 ahead of me slipped and went face first and caught the sidewalk right there. Out cold. So, of course, the person behind him went to go around, and the drill sergeant made it from the bus to the person in front of me and screamed, "Don't go around him, go over him." So about another 20 people went over the top of him. Just ground him into the, I don't think he ever got the red out of those uniforms when he did come to. But they got us into the area. And now this is what's called Hell Night for drill sergeants. What we have to do, I was a drill sergeant too. So one of the things that drill sergeants have to do is you have to take all these young men, and in a very, very, very short time, you have to make them think alike, act alike. They have to be one great big huge unit, does the same thing. And that's hard to do when you've got Jewish kids from New York, and you've got rednecks from Alabama, and you got surfer dudes from California, and you've got farm kids from Michigan. You got people from all different walks of life, backgrounds, religious ideology, socialization, kids that grew up in two-parent families and single-parent families, kids that grew up in loving homes, and kids that grew up on the street. And you've got all of them all at one time. And in 6 weeks, you're expected to take them and turn them into something special. Turn them into men. Not what they're putting out now, but turn them into men. And that's a hard job. So the way you do it is you give them something common to hate, and that's the drill sergeant. And you give them something common to fear, and that's the drill sergeant. And you sleep with a guard on your neck every night because you know somebody wants to cut your throat. But that's how you do it. It's called Hell Night, and it's necessary. So we get into this company area, and they start putting us in formation. And of course, we've got a lot of paperwork to do that night, and the drill sergeants are busy. And they've called drill sergeants from other units to come in. Is typically what happens because you got a lot of stuff to do that night. And so they're ordering us to do certain things. So we're all standing there with these bags over our head, brand new, thinking to ourselves, that recruiter lied to me. This wasn't on the video. And so they're doing things like, drop them. Drop them. Bad word, drop them. They wanted us to drop the sea bag, so everybody does this. We didn't say drop them in front of you. We said drop them, pick them up. So pick them up, drop them. It hits you in the head, goes down. Okay? So then they go, get down on a knee, kneel. So you all kneel down. Stand up, lay on your left side, lay on your right side. Front leaning rest position, stand up, pick up your bags, over your head, drop them. Okay? So just all night long while they're doing this paperwork. So I remember one time I dropped the bag and it hit my cover and it came off. Well, I'm the only guy standing there without a cover on. Of course, you're not supposed to be outside without a cover. So I don't know what I'm going to do because I haven't been given an order. I got to stand. I don't want anybody to know my name. So this drill sergeant gets right up in my ear and screams, "Get your head under cover." Okay. I'm not going to be that guy that doesn't do exactly what I'm told. He said, "Get your head under cover." I got down on the ground and started pushing my head under my hat. I was called Jerry Lewis. Wanted to know what comedy tour I was from and whether so he didn't want me to do that. So I stood up, put the thing on. I'm thinking, dodge that bullet. Come pretty close. But I'll never forget, we had a private that was in our unit. Kid's last name was Neil, Private Neil. And he was a tall, skinny black kid with great big round glasses. He didn't have the RPGs. He had his own personal glasses on. And quite a learned kid, quite a astute kid, which was kind of odd because I was in the infantry. I mean, let's face facts, they don't put the brain surgeons in the infantry. So he was there. And of course, they're screaming out names. And they tell you when you hear your name, answer here, drill sergeant, and run to the front of the formation, right? And so we're learning how to break formation, you know, take a step back, look both ways, take the shortest route, and double time. And so they're doing this stuff, lay on your left side, stand up, kneel. So he'd hear his name clear from the back. He'd go, hey, drill sergeant. And you'd see him just trucking up to the front. You get up to the front. There's two privates in front of the drill sergeant. Who are you? Private Neil. Did you, what are you doing up here? Get your stupid butt back to the guy. Two other drill sergeants chewing on him all the way back. And Neil's back there, pick it up, doing push-ups, 25 push-ups. He's doing push-ups. He's standing up. He's just bewildered. They're doing all these things. Pretty soon, Neil! Hey, drill sergeant! He come running to the front again. And I'm thinking, oh, Lord, I think they met us for us to kneel. So I kneeled and I watched Neil go up and get just decimated again and get just treated like crap all the way back. So they're doing all this stuff, stand up and everything. Well, I'm paying attention. They're down to the ends and they scream, Neil! Nothing. Neil's learned. We're all on one knee. They scream, kneel again. And I'm thinking, we're already kneeling. Is there a private Neil? Hey, Neil said, what's wrong with your ear, son? Are you stupid or just deaf? Oh, he got just ripped a new one up there. And I thought, man, am I glad my name's not Neil. Or on your side. Or drop it. So that was my first experience. And they took us up into the barracks. And, of course, we had 2 hours of the do's and don'ts, what you can do, what you can't do. I can't remember any of it. I don't think anybody can from that night. And then they put us into bed. Now, our Drill Sergeant Wall, who happened to be the first one on the bus, he was a sadistic SOB. What he'd like to do is every night before we hit the rack, did this little thing called Airborne Rangers. Every drill sergeant has a whistle. So he'd come in, he'd say, everybody lock up at the end of your bunk. When I blow the whistle, I want to hear you sound off loudly with airborne. When I blow the whistle again, you'll say Ranger. When you say Ranger, you'll run in place and your knees better come higher, break the horizontal plane. And when I blow the whistle again, I want to hear push-ups. And you will, from running into the front-leaning rest position and start doing push-ups until I blow the whistle again. Then you'll jump up, he called it Airborne Rangers, Airborne Ranger push-ups. So he would come in and he'd do that for about a half an hour every night, just to screw with us. Now, our barracks, being brand new, was all screwed up, so our temperature was about 59 degrees in the barracks. But this is June and July in Georgia. So in the morning when you'd fall out for formation, it was like a 50-pound gorilla jumping on your back the minute you hit that hot, moist Georgia air. From just being used to being in a barracks that was 59 degrees. Now, they tried to get maintenance in and get the AC fixed. It never got fixed. It stayed 59 degrees the whole time I was there. Everybody had the flu. In fact, I remember on our last test, which was a 15-mile road march in bivouac, I had tonsillitis so bad my tonsils were swollen and meeting in the middle of my throat. I was running a temperature of 104, and I was told that if I didn't make that 15-mile road march in that bivouac, I'd have to get recycled. I was not doing that for anything. I suffered through those 3 days and that 15 miles being sicker than a dog. And I watched other people drop out on that road march, and I thought, not this cat. I'm not being recycled at all. So you learn how to push, you learn how to persevere, you learn how to push through. I think back then it was a good thing. Young men learned how to be men. You learned respect, you learned duty, you learned honor. It was back at that time that we used to know what our oath of office was. We understood it. We had NCOs that were from Vietnam. In fact, when I was in the food that we were getting, which was sea rats, I thought was absolutely excellent. It was the green cans in boxes from Korea. in World War II. Those are delicious. And then they changed over to the LURPs. Those would kill you. Then, of course, we settled on the MREs, which stands for Meals Rejected by Ethiopians. They wouldn't eat that crap. It was horrible. So everywhere we went, we'd always try to trade our MREs for local cuisine, and it was usually way better. And those poor kids, they didn't know what they were getting. We're probably guilty for half the population all over the place having colon cancer now because we gave them all of our MREs. But I think back then there was a different standard. I think back then we were still in the Cold War. We still were training for war. I was on a rapid deployment group. I was a night fighter. I received which is one of the highest peacetime awards you can get, which is the Expert Infantry Badge. I received that over in the Arabic Republic of Egypt. That's a test to be an expert infantry, to wear expert infantry. There's a series of infantry things that you have to do. One of them is a grueling 12-mile march with 140 pounds on your back. And over there, we'd have to do the road march. At the end of the road march, as soon as you made the road march, you had 3 hours to make it. I made mine in 2 hours and 39 minutes in 120-degree heat. And we had to wear a 140-pound rucksack, but we were also in a hostile zone. So we had to wear everything more than what anybody else had to wear to get their EIB. So we had to wear K-pots and flak vests, and we had to carry all of our basic load while we were doing this road march. At the end of the road march, you'd get there, they'd have a poncho laid out, and they'd have 3 weapons that were completely tore apart and laid in a pile. You had 2 minutes to assemble all 3 weapons, do a functions check on them, and lay them down. You had 2 minutes to do that. At the end of that, if you passed that, which was the final test, they marched you right from there about a 1 click forward after you just got done doing all this, and you had to shoot 40 out of 40 targets. You had to qualify expert. So out of 322 of us, there was 13 of us that were awarded the EIB there. So that was a pretty grueling test. But in the military, in the Army, the infantry is called the 11 Bravo, 11B. And we always say there's only 2 MOS, and MOS is a military occupational skill. In the Army, we say there's only 2 MOSs, 11 Bravo and support. Because everybody else that goes into the Army, they learn a job, they go to permanent party, and they do their job. Infantry, you can't have them killing people and breaking things. There's just nothing for us to do other than train constantly for the time in which the country needs us. So it kind of sucks being an infantryman because you learn all these skills and you do this thing. You don't go anywhere and do that. You just go somewhere and train constantly in case and until they need you. And so everything else is done for the military. Now, with that, everything we do is a leadership school. Everything we do is a grueling, miserable school. And because of that, we got rank a lot faster. In fact, I was one of the youngest staff sergeants promoted in the Army in a peacetime Army at that time. Now you get younger E6s promoted in wartime, but those are usually battlefield promotions. So during peacetime, though, I was one of the youngest E6s ever promoted. I was 26. I was 25, 24, 25, somewhere right around there. But I was promoted to E6, so I had just enough time in grade, just enough time in service and received that. But I think it was a different Army back then. I think it was a different time. It was the Cold War. We didn't have all this woke ideology. We weren't trying to destroy America. We actually loved America. We had vets from Vietnam that were our NCOs at that time and our officers, and they knew just how miserable war was. And so they were better NCOs. They prepped us better. We understood what our oath was. We understood what it meant to defend the Constitution, and we were tested on it. They don't do that anymore. We have officers, we have NCOs, we have young troops that are taking an oath to the Constitution without even understanding what that oath is that they're taking. In fact, if anybody heard about the new DOD memo that just came out, they issued it in August, and then on the 27th of September, they reissued it. And in section 3.3 of that same DOD memo, it said that the military could be used for local law enforcement, and they gave them lethal authority to do that. That's the first time ever in the history of America that that's been done. The military has never had the authority to use lethal force on American citizens on American soil. This is disturbing. It's disturbing because I know that there's a lot of troops that'll do it when they're ordered to do it. When I was in, especially since after Lieutenant Kelly's trial, the whole thing was you follow orders, but you have an obligation to not follow unlawful orders. And so we were tested many times with unlawful orders to see whether we would do it or not. And that's a tough call. It's a tough decision when it's given to you. But young troops don't know how to resist that order to do horrible things unless they're tested on it. And we just don't have that anymore. During Katrina, we saw that there was a National Guard unit that they came down and said, okay, we're going to go house to house and strip people of their weapons. There was only one squad leader that said, no, me and my squad won't do it. And they said, well, we'll bring you up on general courts martial. And he said, do what you got to do, but we're not doing that. We took an oath to the Constitution. And so they didn't want it to become too big of a news story. So they said, well, okay, we're going to leave you guys back as rear detachment guard. And they went to another squad, and they were more than happy to go door to door and strip the people from a hurricane of their weapons. See, this has been a test. We've been watching this, Waco, Ruby Ridge. It's all been a test to see how much the soldiers will do and to see how much the American public will put up with. We've got to get back to our base. And the only way that's going to happen is us older vets need to remind these younger vets why we're vets. Yep.
Any questions for John?
Tell some of the places where you went that you sold MREs to the kids.
Oh, yeah. In Yakima, we used to get, one nice thing about Yakima is you've got an Indian reservation right there. And the Indians in Washington, they don't have any limit on the amount of salmon that they can catch. Everybody else, there's always a limit on it. So they could catch as much salmon as they want to. And so we'd go out there, and the Indian kids would come up, and they'd want to trade fresh smoked salmon, eggs, just pork, bacon for those MREs. I felt bad for a second. That was in Washington State. And then the other thing is we weren't supposed to do it, but a lot of times we would trade if we were like when I was in the Sinai Peninsula, we'd go out on what's called TRPs or temporary TOPs, temporary observation points, so TOPs. So we'd go out and we'd have to go out in the desert. So we'd go out in the desert, and what had happened is the Bedouin kids would come around and they'd bring food that they eat that's good, because we'd be out with MREs and we were not going to eat that crap, not in the desert. That stuff will kill you. And so we'd trade that stuff with the Bedouin kids, and we weren't really supposed to do that. The Sinai Peninsula is right between Israel and Egypt. That's the area during the 7-Year War. So you've got the Gulf of Aqaba on one side, and you've got the Gulf of Suez on the other. I was on the Gulf of Aqaba side, Zone Charlie of the Red Sea. We used to dive the Red Sea there. A place called the Wizard's Wall. We used to go off there. So we would trade with them. But it was 1988. That was the peace. It's called the Multinational Force and Observers Group. We've been there since. That's the peace treaty in 1979 that was signed between Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin directed by Jimmy Carter. That was the peace accords of that. And so it was put together in an 11-nation multinational force. So the Sinai is broken up into 3 zones. You've got the Zone Alpha, Zone Bravo, and Zone Charlie. Alpha is over by the Suez Canal. Charlie's in the middle, and then Bravo's in the middle. Charlie's over on the Gulf of Aqaba side. And so what happened was you had the Fijians over there, you had the Colombians over there, you had the Canadians over there, you had the British over there, we had Uruguayans, 11 different nations. And so while we were over there, the Dutch Marines were the military police over there. We had some of our MPs that were in with them, and then Canadians did all of our flying. So we had, even though we had UH-60s in the United States, most of our H-1 Iroquois, the Hueys, were over there, and the Canadian pilots flew the Hueys over there for us. And so they were our air support over there. And then we had the Italians. The Italians did all of the shore patrol. The Italian Navy was over there. That's what they did. So we used to trade with them for those guys, the Italian Navy. They would get an entire case of Italian wine on each ship every month. And these guys would complain to us about this Italian wine that we couldn't even get in the States. We're like, yeah, tell us about it. Here's an MRE. I'll take a bottle of that. Because all of our alcohol is restricted. So we'd get the Italian wine. Oh, it was good wine.
Now, I hear that we have a lot of troops over
Yeah.
there. That Lloyd Austin is telling them what to do.
Yeah.
We don't hear a peep about President Biden. What is he doing? Is he telling Austin to take care of this? What's going on?
He thinks he's at Disneyland. Don't wake him up.
I hear he went on vacation now. The 340th day this year.
Yeah, he's been on vacation for a long time. This is part of the problem. Look, elections have consequences. That's the thing I like about, I'm a conservative, I'm a constitutionalist. Why do I like Trump? He's not a constitutionalist. Never has been. He's not a conservative.
We're getting off topic.
Oh, okay. Well, this is still a good video. So he's not a constitutionalist and he's not a conservative. But what he's not is he's not a communist. We've got too many people in the Beltway that practice communistic ideology. He is what the Democrats always claim to be, which is anti-war. He is what a lot of the grassroots American people believe in, the same thing, anti-war. We have no business being in 180 nations of 195 across the world. We have no business being there. And those of us that have been deployed all these different places see the harm that has happened by us being all these different places that we don't need to be. And it costs the American taxpayers. When I was in the Sinai under the Multinational Force and Observers, MFO, we called it the MOFOs. But anyway, when I was over there, I actually got shorted in pay to be there. All the other nations that are there get extra pay, and you, the taxpayer, pay for it. And then Israel and Egypt get paid by the United States to allow this to happen. So the United States is paying, the United States taxpayer pays everything, and the United States soldier gets paid the least of everyone in those zones, the least. And this has been going on since 1979, just that one mission alone. And I'm sure Steve knows of situations where there's temporary duties and you get there and there's other nations there that we're subsidizing. They make more than we make, and it's our mission. So yeah, it's ridiculous, that stuff that goes on. And it happens all the time.
If I can interject one thing too. So during Desert Storm, the cameras were, that was the first time we had a televised war.
Yeah.
Right? So I started telling this story earlier and I got sidetracked. I apologize for that. When we moved up to Tanaji, we were within 20 clicks of the Kuwaiti-Saudi border. And we would get woken up frequently because the Scud missiles going off. Because every time they would fire Scud missiles, we'd get the alarms, the air raid alarms. And of course, Scud missiles were medium range, so we were too close to be worried about those things. Eventually, later on, they did get us with stick missiles, but sidetrack too. What I was going to point out to you guys was, so everybody back home saw all the nice desert camouflage stuff and all the other stuff, right? We spend all this money on our troops.
Those of us who weren't by the cameras, when we first got there, now, mind you, like the very first day, so this is the first conversation I had with my master sergeant when I got off the C5 when we first got there. The door opens up, and it was sort of like, for the ladies who bake here, when you're baking a turkey in the oven or whatever, and you open that door and you feel that heat hit you. So when that C5 nose cone opened up, it was just like opening the oven door. I mean, I kid you not. And I was like, whew, and Top comes on, and of course he's carrying a bottle of water, and I was like, holy smokes, what is the temperature? And he says, oh, it's just probably about 130. I said, wow. So I'm thinking, 130, my gosh, we got to be talking, what's it, like 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun's been baking. I'm like, what time is it? He says, our local time is 1,000 hours, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, holy smokes, are you kidding me? So we're there, and we're close. There's no cameras. So we're wearing woodland camouflage because in 90, that was our first real operations in the desert. We weren't prepared for that.
And we were Op 4, and our Op 4 was the Russia, the Cold War. So we always had the uniform of woodland fighting for Europe.
Which is a thicker for hunters who get camouflage here, it's very compensatory to the woodland uniforms we used to wear back prior to Desert Storm. It's a thick material, and it's green. It's green woodland camouflage. It's what we use to hunt here. You're in the desert. That heat's beating down on you. And the ironic thing is, the thing that would annoy me the most was the black boots. Because black leather boots don't breathe real well out in the sand. And your feet, you would have to change your socks frequently. Almost the same problem, nowhere near to the same degree that they had during Vietnam, because you'd get trench foot if you didn't frequently change your doggone socks. So what was funny about that is then finally, so we'd been there like 8, 9 months before we really started seeing desert gear and stuff like that. Because all the people to the rear that were by all the cameras, of course, they all had the nice shiny stuff, and of course, and the guys up on the front lines had it, which
All about the good shot.
we support that, right? But we didn't have that. And then the funny thing was, so of course the air war happens, and I meant to bring a cruise book. I was going to show you some photos we got of just a column of people coming, the Iraqi soldiers after we had captured them. I mean, there was just lots of them. So we're getting all this brand new gear. Who do you think's getting it? We're giving it to the POWs instead of our own troops. So what we hear about how we take care of our own or whatnot, you can't. Unfortunately, for those of us who've been associated with the government, you have to kind of keep an eye on it with a bit of skepticism.
Really ridiculous is we were training in Yakima, or Yakima Ridge one night, and we were doing. Grab that mic. We were doing because we were night fighters. We were doing nighttime operations, which means we were traveling with Humvees. Now we had Humvees. We had M998 Tangos, which are like a pickup truck, and it's got seating on 2 sides, and everybody sits there. Our commander's vehicles had 50 caliber. Squad leader's vehicle had a 50 caliber. XO's vehicle had a 50 caliber. But all the unit vehicles had Mark 19s, which is a 20 millimeter belt-fed grenade machine gun on them. And so we were training on the ridge, and of course, some of us that were down at the TOC, which is the Tactical Operations Command Center, we had our night vision goggles and stuff we were watching. And so one night we watched one of the vehicles, they happened to hit, and the smiley face went too high on the Humvee, and they rolled a Humvee down Yakima Ridge with troops in the back.
Now, the troops in the back weren't strapped in because we're infantry soldiers. We don't do what we're told. We do what we think we can get away with. And so it was cold, and so there was a lot of guys in their fart sack in the back, not strapped in because the straps aren't big enough to strap you in while you're in a fart sack. So it looked like a bunch of caterpillar cocoons getting pitched out of this thing as it's rolling down the side of Yakima Ridge. So the track commander, who happened to be a gentleman by the name of Sergeant Lott, his leg happened to come out the canvas door as it was rolling down, and it shattered his tibia, fibula, dislocated his knee, and shattered his femur on the way down. Now, on the top of that vehicle, there's what we mount our weapons in. It's called a Mark 64 mount. And that Mark 64 mount, it has about 32 different pieces, and each one of those pieces has a 13 number MSN number that makes those 32 pieces make that Mark 64 mount that is then on the property books of what we have to have. So after the thing rolled down, they said, okay, well, we're not going to give you another Mark 64 mount. You guys have to figure out how to fix it. So because that's on the captain's inventory, so we had to take that thing and figure out how to fix it. So we tore it all apart, and we looked at the parts we could save and the parts we couldn't save we were going to order. So I started ordering the parts. I found one of the things is a little cotter pin. It's about that long. It's about the size of a pencil lead. That's all the bigger it is round. And it had a certain MSN number. Now there's another cotter pin in the book right next to it that's one MSN number off. That was 9 cents. It's made from the same factory. It's produced the same way. It's probably produced in the same machine by the same people, but it's one MSN number off. That cotter pin is 9 cents, but the one that goes in the Mark 64 mount was $11. Guess which one I ordered? No, I ordered the 9 center. I grew up in a poor family. We don't spend extravagantly. So I ordered that, thinking nobody's going to know. Oh, they're going to know. No, they're not going to know. Yeah, they're going to know. So we put the thing together. IG comes down, does the inspection. They go, no, got to take that offline. Why? We got the wrong cotter pin. I said, how do you know what cotter pin I've got? Well, because we've got your entire ordering sheet of what you ordered on it. That's the wrong one. You're one number off on that. We can't accept it. I said, but that's 9 cents. The one that goes for there is $11. They said, we don't care. Order the $11 one. See, this is the problem. The American taxpayer has been absolutely decimated by this military-industrial complex so that we can be in 180 different countries of the 195 in the world. It's ridiculous.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Back to the troops in the United States able to use force on the people. Is that in DC? Is that for the whole United States?
So for the whole United States on American soil.
And who ordered that?
That was DOD memorandum, so it was signed by Austin.
You also have to remember that in '86 is when we tried to Gaddafi.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't where we thought he was.
Yep.
And in '86 and in '88, we were having a lot of conflict with Lebanon.
Yeah, in 86, I remember I was at Fort Dix, New Jersey, when the bubble went up for Gaddafi, and I sat there and watched probably 24 or 25 C-141s take off nose to tail, nose to tail, nose to tail, off and head out over the Atlantic Ocean. Go ahead, John.
I think I can speak for the rest of us that never served. So thank you for you guys to come here and speak on your guys' experience. Thank you guys for your service.
Absolutely.
Well, I tell people all the time, when people thank me for my service, I tell them it was my pleasure, and I tell them I'd have done it for free, but as I think back, I did. And that's really the truth. But the other thing is, when people come up, and as a veteran myself, when people go, gee, I wished I could have served, but thank you for serving. My whole thing is, did you have a job? Yeah. Then thank you, because without the American taxpayer having a job and doing the things that they needed to do, we couldn't have done what we had to do. So for every soldier that's in the field, it takes 10 other soldiers to take care of that. And that takes another 30 American citizens having a job to pay for that. So
I think John wants to get on the road for John.
yeah, he's worried about that cake. So I'm gonna call it an end there.
All right, well, don't go too far. Can you push this over that way a little bit?
Well, here's the thing. I want the commander in chief to know sometimes too. When you order something to be done, don't be sorry when it happens.
Steve and Randy have pictures, please.
Right up. And everybody be mad if it falls on the floor.
I'm going to. All right.
Put it down just a little more, squeeze it in. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right.
If it falls off, John will have it before it gets to the floor.
Thank you.